Phantasm 4 Oblivion is a severe turning point for the franchise. If you're wondering what happened to the first 3 movies, I've actually already reviewed them. I've been reviewing horror movies every day for October for 4 years now, and every year I add a Phantasm movie. After year 5, the last movie will have been reviewed, and I might go back and do an anatomy of the franchise video, but until then you can find the old reviews and the last 3 installments on Facebook under Connor's Comics, link in the description. Definitely recommend doing it, or else you're probably going to get pretty lost considering the 4th one relies heavily on the last 3 films. Sorta. I called this movie a turning point for the franchise because as each film goes on, the quality does kind of decline. The first Phantasm film was one of my favorites in the genre, and its follow-up isn't bad, but overall not nearly as iconic. The third one has its problems, and the fourth one, Oblivion, seems to barely have a structured story and is more about characters we recognize from past films, just doing things that fill runtime. This one loosely picks up the last one left off, with Tim absent from the film and ignores the cliffhanger, and Elizabeth is still never mentioned from the second one. Instead, Reggie argues with his sentinel Jody about helping Mike, who is now in the hands of the tall man. Meanwhile, Mike is stuck in a Twilight Zone episode.
Right.
He's in this coach that won't stop driving, and in the back, the tall man gives some iconically evil lines about hell and death before climbing into the coffin. This leads us into the best scene of the film, where Mike escapes and he goes to hang himself in an empty desert-like landscape. Tall man basically laughs at him, taunting the once boy that death is no escape. He just struggles, hanging there, unable to die without the consent of the tall man. Mike ends up stranded in this desert, heading back to the car in a scene where I feel like R2's gonna pop up behind a rock that he obviously can't fit around. Or the gas mask dude who died like 3 times already. We also get a lot of time with what I call new old footage. There's clips of Mike and Reggie spliced throughout the film where they're much younger, seemingly filmed during the time the first movie was made, and there's close-up shots so it doesn't feel like they're body doubles. And Mike was a teenager then, and he's in his 20s now, so, or at least when they made this. So there's no way they could have filmed it today, or at least when they're making this film. So I wonder if this is cut leftover footage from the first movie, or if it has its own origins. I've never seen an article about it, which makes me wonder if I misremember some of these scenes, or really anything. So I would love to talk to anyone who worked in this film or the franchise that could shed some light onto this. There's also a lot of old stock footage here to fill the time, and there's a sub-story where Mike goes to the tuning fork and lands at the tall man's house hundreds of years ago, before he was corrupt, and learning about the multi-dimensional tuning fork, which was a kind of cool origin story that felt somewhat out of place here. Mike also makes it obvious he doesn't trust Jody, since he's now a sentinel, even though Jody gives him really no reason to feel suspicious, but it's whatever. Meanwhile, Reggie's been fighting demon cops and demon chicks. He ends up dusting off the infamous double barrel sawed-off Step Aside Ash. Reggie makes his way to Mike and Jody, who turns on them as the tall man arrives, which I would have been a much better reveal if Mike never saw it coming, and there's no reason why Mike would have saw it coming. It just felt really forced and out of place, and it could have been a cool reveal. Mike uses a real tuning fork to stun the 2 of them, and the tall man drops a sentinel, slicing Jody's throat, which was, kind of cool. Mike reveals his own homemade sentinel before the tall man takes one out of Mike's head, which makes no sense. He randomly pulls it from his skull, leaving Mike there to die. Reggie runs after the tall man into the tuning fork for another sequel hook for one more movie. Sadly, the next movie is worse by a long shot. Phantasm 4 isn't my favorite, but it's not the worst of the bunch either. I still like the idea of Jody being a sentinel, and I'm really confused what happened to Tim in that story, or why we never reference Elizabeth again, or where this new footage came from of young Mike hanging the tall man, or riding ominously in the dark with Reggie in the ice cream truck. Some of the demons feel even more crammed in than usual this time around. The demon chick and the demon cop feel like they were just there to pad the runtime and remind you Reggie exists, and he's still being a creep. But this one's still a fun movie, and it has the main 4 cast members back together for one more installment before, Phantasm Ravager. Do I have to do that one?
Where do you think you're going, boy? Death is no escape from me.
My name is Reggie. I was an ice cream vendor by trade. Now, I'm a soldier.